Hey there, BookTube. Noah, everyone who reads It Must Converse is the channel. Hey, Yasmin,
Hi,
how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Great. Happy Sunday. Happy Sundays with Borges.
Hell yes.
Bam. We are back at it. We're not gonna
Yes,
stop. We can't stop. We won't
we
stop.
can. Mm-mm.
Borges is one of these authors that I wanted to call out before we get started. There's a new booktuber. I don't know if you've come in contact with him yet. You might have, Yasmin. Book Imp Books
I
is
haven't.
are Black Imp Books. I'll put a link in the description box. He is a Borges enthusiast as well,
Nice.
and doing a Borges series
Mm-hmm.
where he's talking about books that he has a book that is edited and put together, compiled by Borges, that has recommended readings. So
Oh,
he's going
that's
through all
nice.
those short stories. And our boy that starts off the story that we're going to cover tonight is one of those recommended readings. Um, let's get to it, right?
Yes, let's
All
get
right.
to it.
So tonight we're going to cover a story called The Man on the Threshold. This story is very layered, very awesome, and more. I had a great time reading it at first, and even on the reread now, get more and more out of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then when it comes down to it, it's 5 pages. Shocker, right?
Mm-hmm.
The
As
Man on
always.
the Threshold is in the series The Aleph, and I hope you can check it out before spoiling it by our talk. But it starts off with his friend, and we can assume being Borges, his friend Bioy Casares, or Bioy Casares is the name that's given, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that is Adolfo Bioy Casares, the writer of The Invention of Moreau.
Yeah.
And they were contemporaries, they were friends, and Borges is more than happy to make his stories seem autobiographical
Mm-hmm.
and lend them
Yeah.
that kind of credibility by doing that, right? It's so
Yeah.
good. And
Mm-hmm.
in this story, there is layers of credibility given. And and it serves to almost confuse the reader more than to make things plain,
Mm-hmm.
because this thing is this thing is pretty wild, actually,
Mm-hmm.
even especially for 5 pages. So Bjork Casares brings this knife back from a trip from London, and it's a special kind of knife. It has a weird kind of look to it, a triangular blade, it says, with an H-shaped hilt.
Mm-hmm.
So they're talking, you can imagine these two writers just talking and saying, "Hey, where do you think this? What do you think this was used for? What is the purpose of this kind of knife? Us boys, we like knives. You know what I mean? We just play. We might play around with knives from time to time." So he says he's got a friend that is part
Yeah.
of the British Council. Christopher Dewey is the
Yeah.
guy's name, and he gives him a little heads up that this is a Hindu knife from in Hindustan, common use in Hindustan, which is India. And he had done like a tour over there or something like this, and was there, and gives him that kind of information. But then we go right into what is called a happenstance story. He relates a story that is just, part of Christopher Dewey coming over and them
Mm-hmm.
kicking it, maybe
Yeah.
having some libations
Mm-hmm.
and talking and sharing stories. And he goes into this story. Um, I shall be so bold as to reconstruct the one that follows. My text will be a faithful one. And he invokes Allah, which is
Mm-hmm.
something that doesn't happen often in Borges
Yeah.
stories. That he invokes Allah, which it just kind of made me think. But then how it
Yeah.
ends is another Persian kind of uh you know
Reference.
Islam kind of thing. Prevent me from adding small circumstantial details or heightening the exotic lineaments of the tale with interpolations from Kipling, Rudyard Kipling. Besides, it has an antique, simple flavor about it that would be a shame to lose. Something from the Thousand and One Nights. So, again, invoking this kind of ancient, even
Mm-hmm.
Persian tale.
Yeah. Yeah, he does a lot with that first chapter. I always love the sequence of events that lead to the main story. In his
Yeah,
stories, he does that really well with Lawn too. But
yeah.
in Lawn,
The
it's longer.
setup.
Here, he does it in only a paragraph, and it's
Right,
nice because it already makes you think of how important this text is going to be, and it gives it that layer of importance
right,
since this guy Christopher Dewey tells a couple stories, and then Borges picks this particular story to tell us.
right. One paragraph that has just so much kind of that you can just enjoy in it and ruminate over.
Mm-hmm.
It Borges just rocks with this kind of stuff. So we'll go into it. The story starts off with a certain Muslim city is in uh kind of a chaotic state. There's riots.
Mm-hmm.
You can imagine people, dying in the street.
Mm-hmm.
And this kind of situation, we don't really know what time period yet we're dealing with, but it says that he did a stint in Hindustan, which is in India, um, between the wars. So between the First World War and the Second World War. So that is
Mm-hmm.
late 30s, right? Is it late 30s, early 40s, something like that?
Mm-hmm.
Sometime
Yeah,
like
I think
that.
so.
And so the British occupation of India is what is going on. And this guy is a Scotsman, and he is described as just a larger than life kind of figure.
Mm-hmm.
He's somebody you don't want to go toe to toe with. You don't want
Mm-hmm.
to see in a you don't want to see on the other side, where you have an altercation or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
because he has Viking blood. He is very strongly built. He is very dispassionate in his judgments, and he is described later on as a judge. Maybe that is his title, like his regular title. So the city's in disarray, and they send in this strong arm. The guy is David Alexander Glencairn, something like that, right? Just this absurd kind of English or Scottish name. These two Christian names, David Alexander
David Alexander, yeah.
Glencairn, and just like why, you know? But this guy, it very quickly, even by his name being invoked, it says brings peace to the city. But that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't stop him from imposing very strict rules, regulations, and therefore consequences for
Mm-hmm.
breaking those rules.
Mm-hmm.
So imposing peace. Someone who imposes peace, even peace, is a tyrant, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we get a sense that this guy is tyrannical, for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Yeah.
And it says after years, or years, for years, peace are on this city. So we get all this kind of detail, but
Mm-hmm.
then we get this vagueness
Mm-hmm.
that you're like, what is
Yeah.
what is going on? How is this happening? This guy was this guy in India for years. The storyteller is it, what?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
and,
Yeah. It's very
and
confusing
just
again.
yeah, it just gets confusing pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
And then Glencairn, after imposing peace on this city, disappears without a trace.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody knows where he is. None of the authorities know where he is, and there's no word.
Mm-hmm.
But the city's all good, so what's the big deal? But this
Yeah.
is an officer of the government, British government, that is there to hold a post. So they want to find him, right?
Yeah.
Here, the I of the story, who was I, Borges, telling the story,
Yeah.
becomes the I of somebody else who is
Christopher.
yeah, going on an investigation
Mm-hmm.
as to where this guy is. And
Exactly.
go ahead. We
Oh,
don't have a we don't have an I, like a name for this I anymore.
right. Right. Which I was thinking was Christopher Dewey, but it's interesting how the story begins with the focus in David Alexander Glencairn,
Yeah,
this tyrannical figure. Um, and then it switches to this man that is supposed to find him, which is, I assume, Christopher Dewey. But it's this narrative is in the first person from his perspective, but it's being retold by Borges, who says that
right.
is he is going to try to stick to the, um, I guess, true version and the
Yeah,
way
he
that
says there
Christopher Dewey
at the
told it.
end, I'm gonna stick to the facts. I'm gonna uh stick to the true
Hmm.
facts of what has been told to me. My
Right,
text will
but
be a faithful one, he says.
exactly. But
Faithful to
he does say that Christopher Dewey worked for the British Council, but he
right,
doesn't really say that it's him in the story. So, like you said, we're not really sure. So it's Borges telling the story in the first person from what Christopher Dewey said, but Christopher Dewey might have told it in the first person from what somebody else said.
right.
You
Yeah, and
know?
Christopher Dewey, who knows if that is that guy, but he is on a solo mission. It does
Yeah.
say that they wanted to send. They thought that he would get further by going at it alone. And then we have this part here that I just wanted to bring out. I felt this is the investigator that's looking. I felt almost immediately the infinite presence of a spell cast to hide Glencairn's whereabouts.
Hmm.
In italics, there is not a soul in this city I came to suspect that doesn't know the secret and hasn't sworn to keep it. End italics. Most people, when I interrogated them, pleaded unbounded ignorance. They didn't know who Glencairn was. Well, everybody knows who this guy is.
Yeah.
They had never seen the man, never heard of him. Others, contrariwise, had seen him not a quarter of an hour ago talking to such and such. And they would even show me the house the two men that had gone into, where of course nobody knew a thing about them, or where I just missed them. They just left a minute earlier. More than once I balled my fist and hit one of those tellers of precisely detailed lies smack in the face. Bystanders would applaud the way I got my frustrations off my chest and then take up more lies. That I didn't believe them, but I didn't dare ignore them. One evening, somebody left me an envelope containing a slip of paper on which were written some directions.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, you can almost picture the guy very disoriented walking through the city, not really know where to look. And then
right,
suddenly this clue falls in his lap almost. But
yeah,
it all feels very disorienting. And I wanted to mention that just the setting is disorienting from the beginning, where he tells us it doesn't really matter the exact place where this story took place, because we wouldn't really be able to locate this city in India. It doesn't really matter which city it is. And then when it says that, there's a saying that India is bigger than the whole world. Just everything is very difficult to picture, and it all adds to that disorienting
right.
sensation.
There's Borges for sure. The labyrinth, like the city as labyrinth,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
and and also people's minds. They're kind of uh whether they're being honest and truthful, or just trying to figure something out and trying to find your way through something. You're in a labyrinth, and
Mm-hmm.
he loved that kind of thing,
Yeah, he
and
did.
so do I mean, it's just he brings this kind of thing home to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the directions, what do? They send him they give him, directions to a party where a party's going on. There's this Indian road that he's on, and he sees courtyards, and there
Mhm.
is a way in, and in the back there's this huge party going on, a Muslim party. He doesn't obviously doesn't know. There's not a lot of real knowledge of Muslim culture or even Islamic belief system in this story at all. Our tellers are all removed from this kind of thing. So it's just kind of flippantly said, oh, well, it's a Muslim celebration of some kind. And
Mhm.
that's it. So he's
Mhm.
going in, and this is his state where, he's totally unable to get anywhere in his investigation of where this very prominent judge went and things like that. And as he's entering the establishment, the courtyard where this party is being held, there is at my feet, quote, on the threshold of this house, as motionless as an inanimate thing, a very old man laid curled up on the ground. I shall describe him because he's an essential part of the story. His many years had reduced and polished him the way water smooths and polishes a stone, or generations of men polish a proverb. He was covered in long tatters, so it looked like to me, and the turban that he wore around his head looked frankly like one rag the more. Um, so there's a guy sleeping on the threshold of the door, or just laying there, and he starts questioning this guy as to where um Glencairn is. Have
Mhm.
you heard of this guy? Where is he at? Like
Mhm.
the why, and says it to himself as well. How absurd it is that he would even ask this ancient person
Who's so
what,
focused on the past and
right, why. But even this ancient person, the man on the threshold of this courtyard, is not without paradox, because he's described as a man who is so old that
Mhm.
his skin is smooth.
Mhm.
What does that mean? I mean, uh, to compare an old man, an ancient person, to a smooth rocks that have been worn over by water. Well, that's an opposite comparison. That's the opposite of what happens to human skin and our the visual human body as it ages. And um I just kind of think, well, he's playing with us here for sure. He's
Mhm.
given us a red flag, a little kind of tell for something. And the man on the threshold has a lot of information for our guy. He starts talking. And so that is the last half of this story. We've gone through the first half, 2.5 pages. And then the last 2.5 pages, the man on the threshold is relating this story. And he says that I definitely know the judge that you're talking about. I definitely know Glencairn. He was kidnapped and executed, or kidnapped and tried
Yeah.
when I was a young boy, many,
Mhm.
many years ago, when I was a young boy. And he says that he was kidnapped and tried, and then people step over him entering into the party. They're going in, and he's still on the threshold having a conversation with our guy.
Yes.
And he says, it is said that every generation of mankind includes four honest men who secretly hold up the universe and justify it to the Lord. One of these men would have been the most fitting to judge. But where was one to find them? If they wander the earth lost and anonymous, then they are not recognized when they are met, and not even they themselves know the high mission that they perform. Someone therefore reflected that if fate had forbidden us wise men, we should seek out fools. That opinion won the day, and basically they get a crazy person
Yeah.
to
Exactly.
judge this judge, and
Which the
whether or
logic
not.
of, sorry,
Go ahead.
the logic behind that appears to be that God can speak through this crazy person, and the same way
Right.
that a wise person would arrive to the best conclusion, the insane person also can, almost as like two sides of the same coin. But yeah, obviously the
Yeah.
narrator here doesn't really agree with that
No,
logic.
the narrator doesn't agree, but we I think we can be sure that Borges agrees.
Mm-hmm.
That this kind of thing is something that and I love it. This kind of thing is a real mystical inner kind of idea that inspiration, um, divine inspiration, and instinct, the drive that is just present is two sides of the same coin.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing is the same thing, just on different degrees, different spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
So they get this guy to judge
Decide.
our character, and then people are leaving the party and stepping over this guy. As he's talking to our narrator, and that kind of thing just keeps going. And the trial lasts 19 days, and he says that the guy, that Glenn Guerin, totally accepted his fate, totally accepted the judgment of the madman, which was to be put to death, and accepted his fate, accepted his death, and died a virtuous or a peaceful kind of death.
Mm-hmm.
And there it is. And our guy walks into the party
Yeah.
and sees that somebody on the dais up there has a sword that it has
Mm-hmm.
fresh blood on it, the blood that has been used to kill Glenn Cairn, and he finds his body back in the stable somewhere.
Yeah.
So this story that has been related by the man on the threshold as happening when he was a young boy has actually in this story just happened,
Exactly. So
and where
yeah,
we
yeah,
and
you
we're
can
just
take
left.
that as history repeating itself,
Right.
or the man sort of um, saying what is going to happen. He has this knowledge that no one else possesses, and as he is relating what happened, it is
Yeah.
happening in reality. But the way that I kind of see it is how the past bleeds into the present. Um, just gives you this idea of time as one, like past and present and future is just one.
Yeah. I think you're exactly on with that. I saw it as like talking about cycles of mankind's rise and fall is in
Mm-hmm.
this the individual of Glenn Cairn. He was a very prominent figure, had successes, and overstepped his authority, and then was brought down because of it, this kind of thing. And that this is not an isolated event. This is not something that happened. It is something that happens, and something
Mm-hmm.
that will always happen, because and not with individuals, not even saying putting it just on that, but this is kind of a human condition thing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
um I saw the man on the threshold in that first reading as like a father time, this kind of figure that is representative of time. And so in this reading, in what you were saying, I think is very well put, that this guy is ancient and um, present. He is the past and the present, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore, he is the future as well.
Mm-hmm.
But in the story, it is kind of the marriage of the past and the present.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think
I agree with that.
very cool.
Yeah,
What a story! What a
it
five!
is.
What a 5 pager from Borges, huh?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's one of the
Very
most disorienting ones, I would say. But
it is. I'm glad that we decided to do it too,
Mm-hmm.
especially off the heels of something like Aleph and Zohar. You know, Borges does have a. You have to be in a certain mode for Borges, and Borges is the one that puts you there. I
I
can't
was
even
gonna
think
say
of
that.
any. Right? I don't think that anybody else kind of. I can't say, well, if you like this, then you'll like Borges.
Hmm.
Borges is
If
his
you like
own.
Borges, you will like more Borges. That's how it
Right.
is.
Yes.
Just read Borges and see what
That's
happens.
right. And I'm reading 2666 right now. I
Hmm.
I saw a quote from Bolaño, Roberto Bolaño, that said, I could be happy living under a table reading Borges."
So would I.
Me too.
Yeah, and
So
I
good.
was telling you that I see a lot of similarities in the prose. I don't know if you see it too between Bolaño and Borges.
I do because he's very factual and very straightforward. And that's the thing is that Borges will be uh, delivering to you very straightforward uh, prose. And then and when you think about it, you're like, wait, what? Like, okay, you have to. It is very intellectual.
Hmm.
Borges has a
Oh
very
yeah.
intellectual bent with the way that he is delivering his stuff. But then does not hesitate to talk about uh very irrational things. Dreams. Bolaño talks about dreams.
Hmm.
Bolaño talks about the subconscious, these kind of motivations of people that they're not conscious of, that doesn't come from the conscious rational mind. And
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
I'm digging it.
Yeah, me
I'm
too.
definitely digging it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very cool. All right, another one
Great.
down. I think the
Yes.
next time we might marry a couple of stories
Hmm.
and do a Borges does psychology video.
Addition. Yeah.
Yeah, Borges does psychology edition. We'll see how it goes. Thank you as always, Yasmin.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye bye, BookTube.
Bye.